You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you on a Sunday, wrapping up what was a very good weekend for the Atlanta Braves at Truist Park as they take 2 out of 3 from the first-place Philadelphia Phillies, a series they very much needed to at least show some signs of life, send whatever message they can that the hope of winning the National League East is still very much alive. These head-to-head battles, they go a long way towards that, even with a lot of the season left to play, an entire second half, as the case may be. We're going to talk all about what the Braves were able to do on Sunday in a 6-0 shutout victory. They got everything done on the mound they needed. They got things done at the plate that they very much needed, flexing their muscles with 4 home runs against the Phillies to take the finale and, for the second time this year, take a series from the first-place club in the National League East, a team in which the Braves have been looking up at in the standings for quite some time. We'll get into all of this momentarily. First and foremost, though, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube, subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Well, Jake, we talked about, I guess, tongue-in-cheek, but kind of serious as well. It's as close to must-win baseball in July as you can find when you are trying to show signs of life in a divisional race that has very much been in complete control of your rival. The Philadelphia Phillies have been holding on to that distinction. They've been one of baseball's best teams all year long. The Braves, though, for the second time this year, have taken 2 out of 3. And this one, as much as it might have been fun to open the season with a head-to-head victory in a series, this one, Jake, it just felt more of a necessity than perhaps any other recent in-season, regular season type matchup that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, if you got any chance of getting back, you have to not only win these series, you're probably going to have to sweep one here coming up as well later in the year. But, mentioned at the beginning of the season, they won that series up in Philadelphia, and the Braves obviously get off to a great start. And you just felt like here it was again, another 100-plus win season coming your way. But as you mentioned, with how things have gone since then, this feels like a huge series as we get close to the All-Star break and we're now in the second half of the season. You really want to see the Braves be able to get on a good run and to be able to do that against a really good Phillies team. I know they're kind of down in this one without Harper, Schwarber. You miss Wheeler in this series, but still to be able to come out and bounce back after Friday, a tough game, losing that one, hurting themselves to bounce back and win this series, I think, says a lot about this Braves team.
It does. And the pitching, once again, was front and center. Go figure, in a season like this one in which the Braves pitching staff seems to be the overriding driving force in keeping this club as close to on the tracks as possible. Because after that great April, you mentioned the start of the season, taking 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. The offense seemed to be looking pretty good there for the first couple of 3 weeks of the year. And then things started to really slow down, almost to like just this glacial pace as far as the offense is concerned. Nothing really seemed to be working. The Braves, by and large, since the end of April, have been about a 500 club. But the pitching has been a big reason why they've been able to keep their nose as close to above water as possible. While the weekend didn't begin the way the Braves wanted it to, it definitely ended the way they needed it to by taking 2 out of 3 from the Phillies, and Reynaldo Lopez was at the center of that, starting on 4 days rest for just the second time this season. He was handling business on the mound, and the bats certainly delivered to back him up.
Yeah, great start by Reynaldo Lopez and easing maybe any concerns. I know I had them with maybe some fatigue coming, and it wasn't necessarily velocity. It wasn't even necessarily stuff. It was more so just the preciseness on that stuff, which made him so great early on, just being able to locate that fastball where he wants to, drive that slider off of it. The curveball and changeup have kind of come and gone some this year. I thought the curveball was really good in this one. But again, just, regular rest, being able to come up against the Phillies team to win a series and lock it down in a rubber game like that at home to end the homestand. That was one of the biggest starts of the year for Reynaldo Lopez. Obviously, at this point, every start is key, but coming off the 3-start stretch that he had, where, again, he wasn't bad. It's just, he had to work a lot harder, and the stuff wasn't quite as crisp, and he looked just like the Reynaldo Lopez we've seen for most of the first half.
Yeah, one could say he looked like an all-star because he now is an all-star, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Braves representation for that because there are 3 of those, and Reynaldo Lopez is one of them. But this is the kind of performance that the Braves definitely needed and would sign up for from Reynaldo Lopez, and that more times than not he has delivered because, to your point, even when he struggled, it's not like he's leaving in a lopsided game and really putting the Braves behind the 8 ball. Some pitch counts have stacked up on him. He hasn't been able to go as deep in some of these starts, but he's been able to minimize. Even when he gives up the home run here or there, nobody's on base. And I think that kind of worked. While it's not ideal to depart, obviously, the way he did in his last start in the 5th inning, it didn't leave with the game out of hand. And I think damage control, as much as anything, can be a pretty important thing for a starter to be able to accomplish. And Reynaldo Lopez did all of that and then some with 6 scoreless innings and 6 punch-outs against the Phillies on Sunday. 3-homer 2nd inning, Jake, in which Atlanta piled up 5 runs. Adam Duvall got it started with a home run that we'll talk about the significance of a little bit later on. But Jared Kelenic, the big blow, a 3-run shot, and Matt Olson also went deep. Those were 3 different things, I think, as far as range of emotion on home runs, but you needed to see something from Duvall against a righty. Jared Kelenic, I think, has just been kind of looking for one of these big hits lately, and he certainly found one. And to see Matt Olson get into one, that is a welcome sight. And all of that happening in one frame as the Braves piled up those 5 runs to take the early lead and give Reynaldo Lopez some run support after he was able to settle down in that 2nd inning and begin setting the tone on the mound.
Yeah, good to see it, obviously, for the offense to kind of jump out early against a young pitcher. They really pressed him even in that 1st inning, almost made him throw 30 pitches, weren't able to get a run on the board. But, talked about it last night, too, in the inning, I believe it was the 4th inning, where they didn't score but made Ranger Suarez throw a lot of pitches. And then the next inning, they came out and hit those home runs and got some off of them. So kind of a similar thing here. Young pitcher, you made him really work through that 1st frame, and then you come back out in the 2nd inning and just kind of jump on them and put some runs up on the board. And with Lopez, the way that he was pitching, I mean, it's one of those times, unfortunately, we've seen it against the Braves a good bit this year. You get a bunch of early runs, and it's just over at that point. And I kind of feel like that case today with the way that Lopez was going. For Kelenic in particular, cooled off. I mean, it was 3 or 4 game stretch, maybe where he had cooled off a little bit, but good to see him now back-to-back games, getting on base, doing the things that we've seen him do for the past month and a half now. So love to see that from Kelenic because, struggles are going to come. There's going to be ups and downs. So to see him kind of work through that a little bit and to come out on the other side and hopefully, on the other side and just continue to, again, be that good leadoff hitter that can get on base, but also show you some of that power.
Yeah, just a 2nd major league start for Michael Mercado, and he did kind of walk the tightrope in the 1st inning, and that may be an understatement because he walked the bases loaded, and you were just thinking, are the Braves going to squander a golden opportunity to have some charity handed their way and still not be able to cash in for a run? It kind of felt like here we go again, and then right back to work in the 2nd inning, the Duvall home run up into the Hank Aaron Terrace against the righty Mercado, 1st home run against a righty this season. That is a welcome sight for Adam Duvall, who we've talked about this a lot on this show. This is not, if you look at his career splits, something that you would expect to see so much trouble against righties and so much success against lefties. He's kind of been the reverse of that over the course of his career, and he's been around for a minute. The Kelenic blast really opened the game up, and the things that we were seeing were the bottom of the order feeding the top of the order as well. That's something we talked about not even 24 hours ago, about the importance of just getting something going at the bottom of that order. That happened. But I want to touch on Matt Olson. We'll get to the rest of the lineup a little bit later in the show. For Olson, it's been another one of those kind of, wandering in the wilderness, looking for the power stroke, looking for that to get going. I think we've talked about as well, the fact that your leadoff man had gone about 2-3 weeks almost and driven in just a handful of runs. When you're the number 4 hitter in a lineup, I mean, there may not be a ton of expectations for you to do it all, but drive in runs is one thing you are expected to do. And I know nobody has felt it more than Matt Olson because, as I said yesterday, I've seen a lot more slam bats and thrown helmets than I'm used to seeing from this Braves club. So that pressure individually and collectively has certainly been a factor for this club. And a day like today, I think, goes a long way towards starting to release a little bit of that steam.
It certainly does. Obviously, the long ball coming back, I think, does a lot of good for this Braves lineup. We talked about it. It's what they're great at. Matt Olson being right there at the top of all of them after hitting 50-plus home runs last year, setting a franchise record. So, he's frustrated. Hasn't been the season that he has expected and come to expect of himself. And, he's the guy, like you said, in the middle of the order, in that cleanup spot. He's supposed to be driving in runs. He needs to come through in those opportunities. So to see him, get a home run in this one, at least on the pitch, down and in, usually a left-handed hitter's wheelhouse right there, and he drives it out. But to see more of that, get Matt Olson going, get the home run ball going. 9 home runs on the weekend by 7 different players. I mean, that's this Braves lineup. That's what we're expecting them to do. It's what they did all last year, up and down the order. Guys going deep and just taking their opportunities and their chances. You don't know who it's going to be each night, but you give them enough swings, somebody's generally going to run into one. And so
Yeah.
good to see that over the weekend, even in the loss. Again, you had the 3 home runs and that one too on Sunday or Saturday, and then 4 on Sunday. So, the Braves, that's what they're built to do. And we got to see it over the weekend.
Another guy who went deep in this one, Eli White, who's just up from AAA Gwinnett for this weekend series. It had not a whole lot of results there in the first couple of cracks at it, but went deep later in this game. The 6th inning, had a 2-hit day for himself. That had to feel nice to be able to contribute like that. And also on ahead of Jared Kelenic in the 3-run homer. And the Braves, by taking this series, have moved themselves to 8 games back of the Phillies. That might not sound like a lot of progress, but if you were kind of taking the temperature of things on Friday when the Braves had an uncharacteristically bad start for Max Fried, an uncharacteristically bad day or bad inning with the glove and with the defense, to not be able to win that game and then kind of put yourself right behind the 8 ball of, if you want to win this series against Philadelphia, you're going to have to win the next 2 days. And that's exactly what the Braves did. And a lot of guys contributed to that. When we come back, we'll talk more about Reynaldo Lopez, some of the contributors to winning this game on Sunday, this series. And, of course, we'll talk about those Braves All-Stars. All of that is coming your way as the Braves postcast continues. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all of your purchases so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or a fancy dinner that you've been craving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta, and by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back. And remember, use that code LOCKEDONMLB. That's spelled IBOTTA. Find Ibotta in the Google Play or Apple Store, the App Store, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $5 off. Jake, let's look inside the line score and box score of game number 3 of the series as the Braves take 2 out of 3 from Philadelphia and improve to, once again, 10 games over 500 at 49-39. You find the Braves 6 runs on 9 hits, no errors for Atlanta, 6 men left on base. For the Philadelphia Phillies, no runs, 5 hits, no errors, and 9 men left on base. So a very nice line score there. You have Reynaldo Lopez picking up the win. He is now 7-2 on the year, lowers the ERA to 1.71. We'll talk about it again later, but congratulations to him on earning All-Star honors for the first time in his career. And for Michael Mercado, just his second major league start, pretty rough one. Walked 3, lived to tell the tale, but gave up 3 home runs in the second inning and did not escape that frame, charged with 5 earnings on the day as he drops to 1-1 in his brief career. I think we have to go back to Reynaldo Lopez because that's literally and figuratively where it all starts. 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, 91 pitches, and 62 strikes. He settled in because it was a very quick first inning for him. Got 3 ground balls to Ozzie Albies. Barely had to get out there and break a sweat on what was a hot and humid day here in Atlanta. And then in the second inning, that turned into a long frame. But he was able to, by the time it was all done, strike out the side. And I feel like that began to set the tone for this entire outing.
He did, and he kind of got the off-speed pitches working for him a little bit on that one as well. It was good to see for him. Again, for the key has always been, or has been this year at least, for the fastball command, being able to live off of that or work off of that and throw those good curveballs. Like I said, I thought he threw some good curveballs in this game. He only threw 10 of them, but especially to those left-handed hitters, I thought he did a good job locating it down and away. I know he got Brandon Marsh with one of those, but there's just really, there's no worry in him. You saw the graphic during the game, what he does with runners in scoring position with 2 outs. It's just he is able to lock things down and make those key pitches. That he had that slider running really good off from righties down and away off the plate. So just really good stuff from him that, again, we've really become accustomed to seeing. And that's the guy that he is. That's why he's an all-star, just because of what he's been able to do this season. But 58 fastballs in this one, I mean, that is the pitch for him, that it has to be going, but he also just has to be locating it. And when he does that, it just makes that slider so much more effective. Not a ton of whiffs in this game, just 8 on 48 swings, only a 17% whiff rate. But again, just able to locate it, to get them to swing at his pitches. That first inning, you said, just so efficient. I believe it was a 4 or 5 pitch inning, just getting ground balls beaten over there to Ozzie Albies. So, just getting back more to that efficiency, I think, in that command a little bit, that we hadn't really seen as much in those previous 3 starts. But I'd love what I saw from Reynaldo Lopez. Again, any concerns maybe that I had coming in about some some first half fatigue. I think those go out the window, at least for now, because he went on regular rest and looked just as good as he had earlier in the year.
Yeah, and we'll see what the Braves decide to do on this upcoming road trip where they'll play 7 games in 7 days, 4 of those in Arizona, 3 in San Diego. Will Lopez make another start? If he does so, will the Braves try to figure out a way to give him that extra day? Those are things that we're going to find out over the next week. But the mission was to go out there and have a good start against the Philadelphia Phillies, and that's exactly what Reynaldo Lopez was able to do. And again, as we look back at the winter and what the Braves were doing to fortify their starting rotation, we thought when Reynaldo Lopez got signed, that was more of a bullpen move, but, way for the Braves to kind of see what he was seeing, give him that opportunity to it, to buy in on it, because whether or not he was a starter or reliever, it seemed like there was going to be a valuable role that Reynaldo Lopez could play. But I would say this in some ways, Lopez kind of bet on himself and his ability to get back and give starting pitching a go again. And I think the Braves are very happy that, for lack of a better term, maybe that he talked them into it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm one of those. When they signed it, I said, that's cool. Maybe they're going to try to build some pitching depth, but he'll ultimately end up in the bullpen. And I was dead wrong on that because he has looked fantastic. And now you maybe have a rotation piece for the future as well, which we know could be something the Braves are looking to after this year. If they potentially lose Max Fried and Charlie Morton, they're looking for those arms to stick in the rotation. And Lopez through the first half of the season has certainly proven, being an all-star, that he is certainly a candidate for that going forward. And it's been fun to watch and him grow. And I think, again, I hate to keep coming back to it, but for me, it really is just being able to develop more of that curveball and changeup to use those against lefties. The games where he has those 2 pitches working, especially against teams that are going to load up left-handed batters against him. But in the games where he's had those going, it's just really made a difference because it just gives you a little bit more to have to think about. But obviously that fastball slider is what, he's built himself off of, and all the success that he's had as a reliever and now into a starter's role.
Yeah. And it's just, again, for the Braves, good to see that, the vision, whatever the case was, whether it's Reynaldo Lopez deciding that, or maybe they just kind of met in the middle and figured, hey, let's just see if there is a possibility here. And if not, he's already proven himself in the bullpen. Just some great forethought by the Braves and by Reynaldo Lopez, to give themselves this opportunity to find out what, if anything, is there, and to find out that, in fact, there's a lot there in the starting role for Reynaldo Lopez, who earns the All-Star honors for his great first half. Adam Duvall getting the scoring started in the second with a solo home run, a bomb into the Hank Aaron Terrace in left field. First one of the year against a right-hander, as I mentioned earlier. I feel like, Jake, he's getting there. This homestand, particularly this last week, we've seen a lot better swings. We've seen better results. And for Adam Duvall, as much as you can look at maybe the lows and the valleys that he goes through over the course of a season, we've also seen that guy get red hot and make some serious contributions to the Braves offense. This week leading up to the All-Star break would be a great time for Adam Duvall to build on that momentum and finish his first half out strong.
Yeah, one thing I'd say about that, if you would hate for it to be perhaps stopped by the All-Star break, but either way, to get him going. And, he's a lot of guys when he's on, he's going to give you a lot of power. He's going to give you those home runs. And I know we've talked about it at length. He was still hitting the ball really hard, just not getting the results. And I know he's completely frustrated by it. And, the fact that he was really only getting starts against left-handed pitching. So wasn't seeing a ton of right-handed pitching at the beginning of the season. And now all of a sudden you're in an everyday role where you're facing a lot of right-handers. He's a veteran. He's faced a lot of right-handers in his career, but, maybe he just took a little bit of an adjustment there. Whatever the case may be, he has had a lot, not just better results, the at-bats just in general have been better here recently as well. So that's certainly encouraging to see because, again, it's another one of these guys. I mean, he's batting 7th in your lineup. If everybody else is doing their job, then you really don't recognize it as much. And when Adam Duvall, goes deep or goes on a little home run barrage, it's great. And you certainly are happy about it. And that's what you want from him. And hopefully he is in a little bit of that groove right now.
Yeah, Jared Kelnick, meanwhile, has been in a pretty good groove since moving to the top of the lineup for the Braves, hitting just under 300, slugging nearly 550, belted yet another home run, a 3-run shot. It played at Orlando Arcia and Eli White. And those were a couple of names I know that came up in our discussion on yesterday's show about, the bottom of this order. It's certainly not ideal. Can anybody just get a little something going down there so that the bottom of the order can feed the top of the order? And that's exactly what happened with 3 runs on one swing of the bat there. I mean, Eli White, he may not be a long-term answer, but his 2-hit day, that was also a welcome development in this game. So some things happened toward the bottom of the order, which is I did some real digging to see exactly how bad the bottom half of the Braves order has been this year. Coming into Sunday, Jake, 6, 7, 8, 9 for the Braves, batting a combined 216 with 32 home runs in 1,252 at-bats. That is not the production that we were seeing, I think, at any point in recent memory from the bottom 4 men in the Braves order.
Yeah, and imagine you go back and look at last year's numbers from those spots. It's going to be a stark difference. But, the first 2 games of this series, you basically got nothing from the bottom of your order. And again, we talked about it. So to be able to see that today, I mean, it's, you get the results that you get like this. Adam Duvall, 3 hits. Orlando Arcia, love the fact he got a fastball up and away. He didn't try to pull it. He just shot it the other way for a single. I thought that was encouraging for him. Again, it's another guy you want to see that pull side power, but in certain situations, you also want to see him just take his hits the other way and keep the line moving and get on base for those guys at the top of the order. Eli White, he's a guy who was playing really well down at Gwinnett before getting called up. And obviously first 2 games for him were a little rough. So good to see him get on base and do some things, score a run, hit a home run as well. Jared Kelenic, not only did he have the 3-run homer, he also walked in this one and stole a base, which was good to see. Like to see some speed at the top of the order, try to create runs in different ways. So I like that out of Jared Kelenic. So yes, great stuff from the guys at the bottom of the order, kind of feeding the top. And, the guys at the top got it done in the first 2 days. So good to see the guys at the bottom kind of contribute in the finale.
Yeah, I mean, spread it out. It's a team game, right? And you're going to need different guys at different times to be the ones who are kind of the key to either starting a rally, extending a rally, or just getting that knockout blow in this case. And we saw a lot of different guys contribute than we had in the first couple of games of the series, to your point. Also have to shout out what the bullpen did, closing things out. Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson, Aaron Bummer, finishing up that shutout of the Philadelphia Phillies. Just the 3rd time this year that team has been shut out. When we come back, we will talk a little bit about what is coming up for the Braves. It's a week-long trip out west. It begins in the desert with 4 games against the Diamondbacks, and it will end the first half in San Diego against another wild card team in the Padres, who will be welcoming the Braves in for 3 games there. We'll also talk about those All-Stars. I promise we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it next as the Braves postcast continues. Summer travel is heating up, especially for baseball games, so it is time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yeah, we're talking about your rival cities. And with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. From hotels that overlook the stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or the Booking.com app. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Game Time has last-minute deals on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can save up to 60% off even buying last minute. Again, it takes the guesswork out of buying all your tickets, and you do it with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Just create an account, redeem the code. It's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. That's Game Time. Well, Jake, the Braves are going to close out the first half with a 7-game road trip. It begins with 4 against the Diamondbacks, first of which is on Monday night at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll see another All-Star on the mound. That's Chris Sale. It's not a spoiler. This is just the results at this point. Reynaldo Lopez pitching on Sunday. Chris Sale, also an All-Star. He will go on Monday, the Braves' 3rd All-Star. No surprise. It's Marcell Ozuna who's been leading their offense all year long. This is not a year ago when the Braves were sending what felt like a baker's dozen worth of All-Stars to that game, but 3 very worthy All-Stars for Atlanta right here. A first-timer as well in Reynaldo Lopez, and for Chris Sale, something that was maybe a bit old hat in his American League days, but pitching his way back there has been quite the story for the Braves this year as well.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's one of the better stories in baseball is Chris Sale. I think it's also important to point out here, Grant, because I think you probably get some of these same comments that I do saying that Alex Anthopoulos isn't a great GM that we all make him out to be. Where would the team be without Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez and Jared Kelenic with what he's done in the last month and a half? I just think, again, you got to give him huge props for going out and getting these guys. I know we already talked about the fact that the foresight of the Braves to go out and get a Reynaldo Lopez, see what he can do in the rotation, and it leads to an all-star. Going out and getting a Chris Sale, who many people had given up on, and not only is he an all-star, he's right there in the NL Cy Young discussion as well as we enter the all-star break. So very deserved for all these guys. Ozuna's carried the team offensively for most of the year, so definitely very deserved. Glad to see these guys get rewarded for it.
Yeah, third all-star appearance for Marcell Ozuna, but his first one in 7 years. The last couple of times, obviously, with the Miami Marlins, his career year of 2017, that was the last all-star appearance for Ozuna, who now makes it as a reserve and as the Braves DH this year. So we'll see him get some swings, I'm sure, in the all-star game out in Arlington. And again, as you go back to the offseason, and we don't need to turn it into an editorial on all of this, because I think that some of the struggles of the Braves have justifiably made folks maybe try to reevaluate a few things, and maybe the expectations haven't been met. But the bottom line is that this is a team that is more well-constructed than not, has dealt with some major injuries, and is still finding its way to staying in the playoff hunt, and has aspirations of doing some big things. And as we've learned, not even that long ago, and not just by the Braves in 2021, you just get into the postseason and get hot at the right time. There's no telling what can happen, and there's no telling what can happen at the trade deadline either. We've seen that change the Braves' fate in ways that have been very nice in recent memory as well, and we'll just leave that right there. But overall, as you look at what's coming up for the Braves, with Sale and Lopez now in this rotation, it's hard to imagine where the Braves would be had those moves not been made, had it just been, hey, let's stick with some internal candidates. Then you lose Spencer Strider. I know, obviously, there's a lot of hindsight that can be played with teams and players that you didn't go after, didn't sign, and that's all part of the guesswork, I guess, or the second-guessing work. But Sale and Lopez have been a huge part of this rotation, and Sale, he looks good enough, Jake, I think, to potentially start the All-Star game for the National League if that's a road that they want to go down.
Certainly could. I think it's a case with him and Zach Wheeler and some others, but Chris Sale, how well he has pitched, how dominant he has looked, I think he certainly has a case. So we'll see what happens. Again, I think as a Braves fan, especially with your pitchers that are going, you're okay if maybe they don't even pitch, but it is one inning. Certainly want to see him get that, especially Reynaldo Lopez, who hasn't been there before. We'd love to see him get an inning there. But those two guys in particular, you want to just make sure they're healthy, ready to go for the second half.
Now, Reynaldo's had a little bit of experience in the bullpen as well, so it may not even be that weird for him to toss an inning in the All-Star game. We'll see what decisions are made there, and I don't know when they're going to name the alternates and all the different changes that could be made, because there are going to be pitchers who were named All-Stars that either A, won't participate, or B, based on the usage rule that's now in place, aren't going to be eligible to. Still, maybe that glimmer of hope for Jesse Chavez. I don't know. We'll see how all that plays out. Chris Sale is going to look to add another line to his All-Star credentials with a win over Arizona on Monday. Game 1 of the 4-game set. Sale's 11-3 with a 2.71 ERA. Gilbert Diaz is going to be on the mound for Arizona. He makes his major league debut. Should be an interesting matchup in that you've got the veteran Sale looking to set the tone for his club as the Braves will try to go into Arizona, a place and a team that is kind of searching for itself as well this year, has not gotten off to the start that they certainly wanted to, coming off a World Series appearance. And then you're facing a rookie making his major league debut. So a very different kind of pitching matchup, but opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, it seems like a good one on paper. As we know, baseball's not played on paper, but Diaz making his debut. He does have a lot of strikeouts, 105 this year in 76 innings. You mentioned the Diamondbacks. Their superstar has been struggling this year in Corbin Carroll. It seems like a lot of hitters are. So the Braves swept the Diamondbacks back earlier in the year when they were playing their good brand of baseball. Hopefully that continues. Hopefully the Braves can get this road trip off to a good start. Last time they were out west, it was just a disaster of a road trip. And even their last road trip, it started well, winning a series in Yankee Stadium, but then kind of went downhill from there. So I'd love to see them in the first half with a good road trip.
Yeah, why not pile up a whole bunch of runs early and let Chris Sale just, put it in cruise control and do the thing he's been doing all year and start the series off with a victory. That's what the Braves will be aiming to do. All 4 games in this series will start at 9:40 p.m. Eastern time. So you might want to make a second pot of coffee, and you might want to wait until the afternoon to put that thing on as well. We will bring some post-game coverage throughout this series and throughout this road trip as well. So continue riding along with us. But for the Braves, it's going to be a long trip out west, open to close out their first half on a good note with a series victory out in Arizona being job number 1, step number 1, and then a 3-game set with the San Diego Padres awaiting before the All-Star break itself. Chris Sale against Gilbert Diaz on Monday, 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time. The first pitch in the opener of the 4-game set. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us your likes and comments on the video. Share the show with a friend and help us grow the channel. We always appreciate that. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. Once again, the Braves take 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. Now they'll look to keep that momentum going on the road. Until next time, we will talk to you then. And until then, so long, everyone.